And yeah, welcome everyone. Welcome to the fifth Unity workshop of this semester. I will be doing Unity UI basics, mostly like main menu, some buttons, and assigning logics to them. And also, I would like to get into some scene management as well. Let me just check the recording just in case, and everything is looking good. So yeah, I will be using Unity 2D for this one. I won't be focusing too much on the scripting part, and also we won't be doing a lot of gameplay for today's workshop. Instead, we will be mostly focusing on the UI elements. And yeah, here are basically what we're going to do today. We're gonna create a simple main menu for our game. So whenever a player opens up the game, that will be the first thing that they're gonna see. We will be using Scene Manager and loading scenes, changing scenes and stuff. And also I will also introduce you to a function that sort of keeps certain objects that you choose um, to be loaded to other scenes as well, so that they remain within different scenes. And yeah, we can just open up the Unity editor now. Um, so yeah, we are currently at our sample scene. What I would like to do is to just rename it to something like level 0 or level 1, whichever name you want. And also let's just create some little objects so that it's sort of not an empty scene, but rather it has some items so that we can differentiate it from other scenes and so on. I don't know, anything you can add, right click to the object, square and stuff. And yeah, so this will be basically the game itself, sort of. And if you're done with adding some stuff, let's just create a new scene. And if you just right click and get into the create tab, you should see this option to create a new scene. I would like to just click to it. And yeah, so we can rename this new scene into something like main menu. And we will be basically adding all of the main menu logic to the scene. And something I would like to remind you is that as you'll remember, this one is from the first workshop. This slide, Liz created it. So basically, when you create a new project, it can have multiple scenes. It only has two, but we have multiple scenes as well. And every scene contains game objects, and the game objects, for example, the square objects that we've just created, or I don't know, particle effects, some of them considered as game objects as well. And every game object contains components. But what we're gonna do today is that we're gonna go from one scene to another. Yeah, we can just open up the new, or yeah, let's just save the level 0 scene first, and then we can get into the other empty main menu scene. So yeah, we can just start by creating a new UI element. When you right click, you're gonna see around the bottom, you're gonna see a UI option. I would like you to create an image. It should be at the top. I guess you can all see it. Um, yeah. So, when we created this image object, you're gonna see that in the scene view, it sort of has this weird like you can see that it's quite large in the scene view. Um, and when you move it around, and also if you keep the game scene open, you're gonna see it around and so on. So And also, one other thing you can see is that, like, when we just created this UI element, automatically a canvas object was just created. So whenever we would like to add a UI element, it can be something like a scoreboard or like health bar of our player and like anything, or like maybe tutorial screen pop-ups. We should be adding them to our canvas. So, for example, you don't have to follow along in this one. So, for example, if I just get into level 0 and like, I don't know, or actually maybe I can also show it in the main menu as well. So I have this little image item, and if I just create a normal like 2D object, let's make it a circle. So um, I have this circle, I can move it around, and if I change the direction, if I change the orientation of the main menu, you're gonna see that like even though in the scene view, we are not seeing this little square, or like we can also add other UI elements as well. Like I said, you don't really have to follow along in this one. So for example, if I'm just gonna create a text object like this, maybe if I make it a lot bigger and, or maybe not that bigger, we will get into them in a lot of details. Let's just call it like ABC, change the color to white, and like change the font size a little bigger. I'm using the legacy version, but we will be using a better version for it. So yeah, for example, if we want to like keep this thing at the like top left corner of our game, and if we move the main camera, you're gonna see that it will remain the same within our, you know, within our scene. And yeah, that will be basically our game UI from now on. I'm just gonna delete the circle that I just created. Inside this canvas, I'm just gonna, continue going forward with this image that I created. So yeah, this little image will be actually our background image for our main menu. So, and also, when we get into this part, you're gonna see that this UI object is sort of different than our normal game object. So you're seeing that normally it should be a transform, but rather it's a rect transform. It contains several extra fields, but you can also see that rotation and scale parts are entirely the same. We can actually create a simple game object, not a UI object, but a game object, and see the difference right over here. So this one is basically a normal game object. The transform is like this, but UI's transform is a lot more advanced, if you see. So yeah, um, you don't really have to worry about like the anchors and pivots. Um, Instead, what I would like you to do is just click to this little square around here at the like top left of the rect transform component. And you're gonna see a lot of different squares. We're not gonna use all of them, but just know that like when you click to one of them, you can set the pivot or like anchor points. But instead, what I would like you to do is just hold the Alt key and click to the one at the bottom left, just this one. This will basically stretch our little image to the whole screen. So the whole point of this is that it's kind of like a shortcut to stretch this UI object. And we are basically calling Unity Editor that, or just change the size, width, and height of this Unity UI object to the same as its parent. And that's what we did here. So yeah, it will be the background. As you can see, since we just created this as a image game object, it has this little component over here. We're just gonna add our own source image to it. As you can see, like this part, you can actually change the sprite right from here. What I would like you to do is we can just search for a main menu image from the internet. I'm just going to use this one. So I'm just going to wait for a while for you to, pick a little background image for your game. So I just typed in main menu background image, and I will be basically using the first one that I encountered. So yeah, save image as into any directory that you want. I already downloaded that, so I will be using this. And by the way, when you are working on this, do you have any questions regarding anything? Have you encountered any problems? Is anything unclear? All right. So yeah, if we have the image installed, I'm just gonna create a new folder to store this image that I'm gonna, drag into my game. I'm just gonna call it, I don't know, sprites. You don't have to create this folder. You can just have it like in the assets folder. It's fine. I'm just gonna get this from my file explorer and drag it right over here. And when you drag it right over here, you can also see that when I click this PNG image, it has it has some certain attributes. I'm not going to change anything into that, but if you are currently working in Unity 3D, this texture type is most likely something else, and it will most likely not going to work when you try to drag this image into an image component. So if you just change this texture type into sprite, 2D, and UI, everything should work fine. I'm just gonna drag and drop this background image that I installed and right over here. And yeah, that's basically it. So, and then, yeah, we just stretched it. It's now our background image. And also, when you click to the canvas game object, you're gonna see this canvas scaler right over here. It's one of the components. I would like you to change this UI scale mode into scale, instead of constant pixel size, just into scale with screen size. So this canvas scaler is basically affecting the font sizes or some of the image borders. So yeah, you can just change this reference resolution to your target resolution. And you don't really have to keep it as is. Maybe you can add some functionalities to your game so that it can make changes to this canvas scaler whenever your player decides to change their resolution. But I'm just gonna keep it like this so that our game looks a bit better and there's no resolution errors and stuff. And if you're done with it, let's just create a button. I would like to show you the logic behind buttons. And also I'm just gonna change this image name into background image so that it's easier to follow, I think. So yeah, you can just click to canvas and right click, go into the UI and find the button that has TextMesh Pro in it. And I'm gonna explain what TextMesh Pro in a second. So have you find it? Right click, UI, button, TextMesh Pro. Let's just create it, and it's gonna ask us to import TextMesh Pro. So TextMesh Pro, Unity has a text render. How can I say it? I don't know, but it basically has a text logic. But this TextMesh Pro is basically an improved version of it. It's basically a lot better. It's a lot easier to use. It's better looking and it's more customizable. So we're gonna use it instead of the legacy version. So let's just import TextMesh Pro Essentials. It's gonna take a couple of seconds. We don't really have to worry about TextMesh Pro examples and extras. These are just for, some examples of TextMesh Pro, what can you do with it, and so on. Yeah. So after we import it, we can just get into the button logic. So yeah, when you click this button, when we just created it, you're gonna see that it created a button object and it automatically has a text field, which is a TextMesh Pro. If you just zoom into the scene, you can see that like it tells like just button. You can actually change it to something else if you go to TextMesh Pro object. And something I want you to see is that we just created it, and like when we click it, it's too little. Maybe I should make it a lot bigger. Let's just click to the button game object and change its size. So let's click to the button game object and change the width to 500 and height to 100, just like this. Now, if I run the game, you're gonna see that whenever I click, this little button actually reacts to it. It's because of this button component that we are using. It automatically created it. So, and also as you can see, it has an image tab as well. Just like the image that we have used for the background image, you can actually have your own sprites attached to this button. We're gonna use the default UI sprite, but yeah, you can definitely change if you want. So after that, you can actually, and by the way, like whenever we are making changes, be sure that your game is not running. Otherwise, like the changes you make will not be saved. So for example, I just changed the color, and like if I just like stop running the game, you're gonna see that the changes are not there anymore. So yeah, we can change some of the attributes right over here. For example, in the button component, we can change the normal color. It's basically the default state of the button. So we can just change it into something like, I don't know, I'm just gonna go with purple. And maybe like change the highlighted color into red. Whenever you highlight the button, the color will change from purple to red pretty much. And whenever you press to yellow, like whatever you want, selected color, if it is selected, the color will change, and disabled and so on. Yeah, like after you make those changes and if you run the game, with the color changes you have done, you're gonna see that if I just hover over this button, the color will change. If I click to it, the color will change accordingly. If the button is selected, the color will be like it. So you can just play around with it, just get comfortable with it. You don't really have to worry about this part. This one is just for visualization. Yeah. So for example, if you don't like this thing on the background, but you still want to, keep the logic, you can just actually, I don't know, get into the normal color and like change the alpha to 0 so that only the text will stay there. And actually this text is currently looking ugly. We're gonna change it, definitely change it. But yeah, if you don't like this thing on the background, you can just change the alpha to 0. It's basically a coloring trick that you can do. Yeah, and if you're all done with it, let's just get into this TextMesh Pro. So yeah, first of all, I would like to change the color of this text font into just white so that it's more visual, so like it's more visible. And I'm just gonna use auto size with this one, but I don't know why it disappears after I do that. Anyway, like it seems the auto size doesn't really work on my end. I'm not quite sure why. You can actually try doing it on your own and see if the auto size is working or not. But yeah, you can adjust the font size. For example, if we have done the font size, and like we can also make changes with the alignment. If you want to like keep it in the middle, just like this. And also, like you can also play around with the wrapping overflow things as well. Like this. Do you want it to wrap and so on? Yeah. I'm just gonna call it a button, a simple button. And then I will just, you can also move it around. I'm just gonna keep it on the left-hand side. Oh, no, not this one. Just select the button, not the Text Mesh Pro itself. Since like Text Mesh Pro, this little text object is a child of this button, whenever we move this button, this text object will come as well. So yeah, I'm just gonna place it right over here. And I kind of suggest you to use this move tool instead of like rect tool, because like sometimes I kind of do like sometimes you might mistakenly move around these ones. These are basically the anchor points, but yeah, just be careful about them. But they shouldn't really cause so much problems to your game. All right, so this one is basically the first button that we're gonna use. I'm just gonna use this as a prefab because we're gonna use different buttons throughout our game. So I'm just gonna create this little folder and call it prefabs. And as you all remember, if you just hold this button game object and like drag it right over to this folder, now it's basically a prefab. And by the way, like we could have also like placed it right over here. Basically, it's not a prefab just because we moved it into a folder called prefab, but rather we just moved it into assets folder. That means it's a prefab now, sort of. So I'm just gonna keep this. Just gonna delete it and move it to the prefabs. I have two prefabs. I see. Just like this. So what I would like you to do is just add two more buttons and move them around, like side by side, or not side by side, but vertically. Just like this. And also, I think I'm gonna make some changes. Like I'm just gonna change the alpha of this prefab to 0 so that like I don't really like this little background thing that was on the menu. And by the way, like whenever I make a change in the prefab section, you're gonna see that everything will be saved in our game as well. So we can just align them. And by the way, like if you use the rect tool, you're gonna see that Unity Editor will help you to align them vertically or like side by side. It's basically a cool feature. You can just use it. So yeah, what I would like you to do now is that, by the way, like, do you have any questions? Any problems? Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think my buttons are working when I try and click on
So you mean the colors doesn't change,
them. The
or
colors don't change.
let me just check. I'm just gonna. Anyway, so yeah. Now I'm just gonna change the names of those buttons to the names, or like I'm just gonna basically change their names so that it will match their functionalities. So for example, first one will be called play, and in the Text Mesh Pro, I'm just going to change it into play as well. And same goes for the middle one. I'm just going to call it options, or like maybe if we be more literal with them, play button, options button, and lastly, exit button. Just like that. So, and also, if you see some, low resolution issues with your game, in the game tab, you can just set up the target resolution on your game. For example, if you want, you can, like, if the low resolution aspect ratios is like checked, you can uncheck it for better like visuals, or like you can change from full HD to 4K if you want, but yeah, I'm just gonna stick with 2K. All right. We talked about Text Mesh Pros, we prefabbed them, we have 3 buttons, and yeah. So what I would like to do is I'm just gonna, add some logic inside those buttons. So for example, if I just click this play button, if I just select this object and go down, inside this button component, you're gonna see that there's this on-click tab right over here. For example, we can just, like, when we click plus to it, we can actually assign some functions to this certain button, so that like whenever we click this button, those functions will be called, and we will get into them in more detail. So first of all, and also like maybe that would be better if I just explain. So for the play button, what we're gonna do is we're just gonna click to it, and then we will basically move from this certain like current main menu scene to the level 0. And for the options tab, we're just gonna basically hide those buttons and like add or like enable new buttons so that it's the new menu screen, sort of. So first of all, we can just create an empty game object right inside this canvas. And I want to make this empty game object the parent of these buttons, just like this. So if I just move around this parent game object, you can see that I can actually move all of those buttons as well at the same time. And like if I disable this game object, the buttons will be disabled as well. So yeah, that's a good way to manage our buttons. So yeah, do you have any questions? Are you all done with, assigning the buttons to, yeah.
Where did you see that game object?
Huh?
Where did you see the game object?
What do you mean? By like creating, or?
The way for you to select all 3 buttons at the same time.
So yeah, you just made it the parent of these 3 buttons, right? So since it's an empty game object, it has no like image component into it, so it's basically an empty game object. We don't really care about its orientations or like scaling and so on. It's just a placeholder for us, and I'm just gonna call it main menu. So are you like, and also, oh yeah, all right.
Thank you.
And also if you just click to it, you can just move it around just like this. And yeah, we can start adding some logic to those buttons. So I'm just gonna create a main menu game object. No, a main menu script from here. I assume you all know how to create a script. I'm just gonna create a scripts folder and like paste this. It's gonna take a while. Or like you can also have a different name for it, main menu logic. Yeah, whichever one you prefer. Then we can start by making some changes to it. Let's just open this script. Oh. And also be sure that the name of the class and the file is the same. Just because I renamed it, sometimes it's not, calibrated with each other. But yeah, I'm just gonna create a public void play button logic. So this one is going to be a function that will be called whenever we click the play button. You can name it whatever you want. There's no like practice going on. It's basically your preference at this point. So for example, just for visualization, I'm just gonna do this. Play button is clicked. And now if you're all done with it, we just created a public function inside this little component. So let's just click to the play button, then click this on click tab. Sorry, let's just click to the plus sign that you see right over here. So it's basically looking for an object. And since we basically assign this function inside this component, which happens to be inside this main menu game object, what we have to do here is we're just going to select this main menu and drag and drop to this little part right over here. And then we're gonna basically select the function that we've just created. So when you click this no function button right over here, let's just select the main menu logic. It's gonna look inside this component and you're gonna see a lot of different built-in functions. Let's just find the play button logic that we've just created. Now what we have done is we basically assigned this little function inside this button. So because of that, and also this one is saved, when we run our game and like click this play button, you're gonna see that it will be logged into the console because that's the functionality. But we're gonna do more things with that. So sorry. So I'm just gonna comment this out, and what I would like to do here now is to just change scene so that whenever we play the button, we get into the other scene, the level 0 one. So we can just start by adding this new using statement, and let's just import the scene manager, Unity Engine scene management. Also it's recording, yeah, just like this. So then we can just call scene manager dot load scene, and let's just have this name of the scene that we have, like the other scene. Let's just give the name of it as an input. And also there are multiple ways to actually use it. So this one is basically one method. You don't have to follow along in this one. But for example, you can just get the index of that scene just like this, or like maybe that's a better idea to just show it right over here. So when we go to the file, build settings, you're gonna see the scenes that our game knows, sort of. But as you can see, currently our main menu is not a part of our game. So if you, for example, build this game and run it, it will basically start from this level 0. Instead, we would like to add our current scene to the build settings as well. So let's just open up this build settings if it is not open in your game. In your editor, go into the file and build settings, and just find this scene that you would like to add and place it right over here, just like that. And for example, I would like to keep this main menu as the first scene, so that whenever we actually build on this game, the first thing the player is going to see is the main menu. And one thing to keep in mind is that in order for this scene manager.load scene to work, every scene should be specified in this build settings. Just something to keep in mind. So yeah, this one is a one way to switch to the new scene. The other one is using the build index values. For example, I'm just gonna say it current scene index and call it scene manager. Get active scene. Get active scene will return us a scene which is going to be the main menu for our case. And it has this attribute called build index. And the build index is basically this little value that you see over here. It's basically a way to differentiate or like find certain scenes that way. So this one is going to return 0. Then we can just do scene manager and load scene again, the same function. And you're gonna see that this load scene has different versions to it. Maybe, oh yeah, like this. For example, this version takes in just one integer value, which is the build index. Or like you can also provide the scene name. You can give like modes to it as well. Like there are some specifications to it, but we don't really care about them for now. Yeah, we can also assign the current scene index and add a +1 to it, so that it will change the current scene into the one that has the build index 1, or like current index +1. So this approach is a lot safer because you can actually have some typos right over here, and there's actually the compiler basically won't warn you if you have a typo like this. But I'm just gonna use the other one because like it's less code, sort of. So yeah, if you have saved this function, if you have saved this file, and since we have everything right over here, we can just play our game. And you're gonna see that when we click this play button, now our scene is different now. Like from the main menu scene, we just got into the game itself. Yeah, just like this. This one is basically one functionality that we have just added. So yeah, let's do the options menu now. So just like we have done in here for the main menu, I would like to create a empty game object right over here and call it options menu. And let's just click to this options menu game object and create, or like not create, but open up the prefabs tab and just assign a new button to it. just like this. And also currently it's looking ugly. Just disable this main menu parent so that the buttons will go away. And also when they're disabled, the functions are disabled as well. So you don't really have to worry about, oh, I just clicked here. What if it opens up the game because like there's a play button there? It's actually not detecting anything at this moment because it's disabled. So yeah, this button will serve the purpose of a back button. So the logic is basically we just got into this options menu, or like if you want, you can also like specify it right over here. I don't know, just create a UI object which happens to be a TextMesh Pro like this, and like I don't know, options. Yeah, auto size works now. I don't know why it didn't. You can just scale it up since, yeah. And also you can actually change the font asset as well. So what, for example, you can just install any font that you want from the internet and just drag it right over here. The font will be changed. For example, they seem the same, but yeah, like if you have just like adding and dragging images, it has the same functionality. And you can also use material preset as well. For example, if you can just do, instead of Liberation Sans SDF material, you can have this configuration as well, drop shadow. It has this little like shadow effect. It's cool. You can use it if you want. Or like if you want more customization, you can go down and play around with the outline colors, outline itself if you want. It's really up to you. Like TextMesh Pro, I think is pretty cool. It has a lot of details in it. So yeah, just like this. Title. Oh yeah.
How do I disable the game object?
Oh yeah, you just have to select this and uncheck this right over here. Mhm. So yeah, we can just change the text inside this button into something like back. So let's just add some functionalities to the back button. Since it's a prefab, so everything, like every color, every changes that we have done so far in the prefabs page will be saved right over here. So let's just get this on click and add a new function to the list. So let's say we are in this options menu. So the functionality that I would like to implement today is to just, whenever I click this, I want this options menu to go away and this main menu to be enabled. That's basically it. That's the only functionality that I would like to add. And also there are like millions of different ways of actually doing this functionality. You can also have a different scene just for the options menu, or like I don't know, um, like like I said, you don't really have to use the on-click method as well. You can just implement this logic in your code as well, whichever way you prefer. But I think these functionalities are pretty cool to utilize. So I'm just gonna take this. Sorry. So inside this back button, I'm just gonna select this options menu and drag and drop it to this object tab. Is it all clear? I just selected this parent UI object inside here. And now if you're gonna see, it only has like game object and rect transform functions. But for the main menu case, you know, the main menu logic was there because this has the rect transform game object, and additionally this component as well. So just because of this options menu doesn't have like any additional component, it will only have like 2 of those selections here. So let's just get into this game object and select the set active function. This one is actually a built-in function for game objects to disable or enable them in script, but instead we're going to use it in our editor. So yeah, whenever we click this back button, this set active function will be called, but you're going to see that this one is actually taking a Boolean value, and this Boolean value is represented right over here. So when we click this back button, we want this options menu to be disabled. So this should be unchecked. It should basically give in false whenever we do it. So we can just test real quick. When we play our game, it's taking a bit while, I don't know why. Yeah, if I click this button, you're gonna see that options menu is disabled now, but we also want this main menu to be attached. So we should add another function to it. And for our case, we're gonna get this main menu object that has our other buttons. We just drag and drop it right over here and select the game object and set it active, just like this. And also be sure to check this one. This one represents the parameter that it takes. For example, like if we have send message, we can specify the message that we send. I don't know what it does, but it's basically, this part basically changes whatever the function parameter is. So yeah, from the options menu, you can just click this. If everything is implemented fine, the main menu will be enabled, and yeah, and also you can just click play and start the game if you want. So yeah, is everything clear? Do you have any questions, any problems that you have encountered? I'm just going to disable this options menu and enable this main menu because that's the default state of our main menu. All right, and also let's add the exit functionality as well. It's pretty straightforward. Let's just get inside this main menu logic, and just like we created this public void function, let's just call it exit button logic, just like this. And then the only thing we have to do now is to basically call this function application.quit, and that's basically it. And as a matter of fact, this function will not do anything in the editor, but if you take a build of the game and actually run this game, you're gonna see that the game actually terminates thanks to this function. And also don't forget to add this little function that we have just created to the exit button right from here. Let's just click to the exit button and drag and drop it to this object tab that you see. And then, oh, sorry. Yeah, just drag and drop the main menu instead of the exit button. And from the main menu logic, just find the exit button logic. Like I said, it won't do anything, but if you take a build, you're gonna see some differences in there. So yeah, that's basically a very simple main menu. Maybe like if we have enough time. Oh yeah, I forgot to add the same functionality that we have in the options menu to this other options button in the menu. So yeah, we're gonna basically going to do the exact same thing but with different parameters now. Let's just get inside this options button. Be sure to enable this main menu. Select this options button and like add two functions. First one is the main menu. Drag it right over here. The main menu should be disabled. So game object set active, and this one should remain blank. And the other one is options menu. Options object should be active, and this one should be ticked. And if we play our game now, you're gonna see that this little game object will be disabled and the options menu will be enabled afterwards. So yeah, do you have any questions now? Any problems? If not, we can get into some more scene management. So yeah, let's just select the other scene that we have created, like the first initial scene, which is level 0. And yeah, I want you to just create a little square game object. We're just gonna quickly make a movable game object. Let's just call it a player, or not this one. Yeah, let's just create a simple square and create a script called player. Oh, and also, I don't know why my position is like too off. If it is the same case for you as well, be sure to create this little square game object in the 0, 0 axis, 0, 0 coordinates. Yeah, it will be our player. And if you have the player script attached to it, let's just get into the player logic. And also, I forgot, let's just add box colliders. Basically the same thing that we have been doing so far. Box collider to the rigid body to the like everything. And just change the gravity scale to 0. And yeah. So if everything is ready, let's just open up the player script. I'm just gonna quickly make a very simple moving player. Private rigid body, take the rigid body, and inside the start, just get this rigid body, get this rigid body component so that we can make adjustments on the velocity. In the update function, let's just have float x input get axis, just like we did in the previous workshop. Horizontal float y equals to input get axis vertical. And if you want, you can use get axis row as well. Unity, sometimes smooths the values. So yeah, it's really up to you. I'm just gonna use get access row. And after that, let's just create a vector2, which happens to be our direction that we're going on. New vector2 x, y, and we're gonna normalize it, because if we press W and D at the same time, if both of them are going to be 1 at the same time, the magnitude of this one is going to be 1.4, so we don't want that. And also, let's just calculate our velocity, new velocity. Let's just get the direction vector, multiply it with a speed value, and time dot delta time to keep the speed consistent within different hardware specs. And lastly, just change this velocity to our new velocity. Remember, this RB is assigned to the rigid body. So yeah, whenever we make change to the velocity, it will be applied to our game. So like, are you all done with this? Are you all ready? I'm just gonna run this game. Yeah, all right. Any questions? All right. It's compiling. And if we don't have any problems, whenever we use WASD, we should see our player running. So like if, for example, if your character somehow like falls down, it's probably because your rigid body gravity scale is more than 0. Just assigning it to 0 will fix it. And yeah, I assume your object is like moving around. All right, so I'm just gonna create something like a portal to our game. So the logic behind is, within this, like when we collide with this portal, I want to get to the next level, and which is going to be a new scene that we're going to create. But let's first create a 2D object, and let's just choose a capsule. And you can stretch it the way you want. Like you can make it a circle as well. It's really your call. And let's just like, if you're done with the scaling, maybe like you can change the color into something else. I don't know, like orange. Then we can add collider to it. The shape doesn't really matter actually, as long as it's a collider. It should work fine with our game. Then be sure to make it a trigger. Otherwise, if it is not a trigger, our character is gonna bump into this little, portal. We don't want that. We want this portal to be a trigger, and so that like we can go inside it, sort of. And be sure to make your changes when your game is not running. And yeah, if you assign this portal's collider to a trigger, and let's just add a new tag. I'm just gonna call this a portal, the name. So let's just click to the tag section right over here. When you click this portal game object, I couldn't name it. Yeah, if you select this game object, let's just assign a tag to it. I'm just gonna create a new tag right from here and call this tag a portal. So as you'll remember, like we're gonna use a on collision detection, on trigger enter function, and we're gonna basically understand if the object we're colliding has this tag or not, sort of. I think we have done this one several times in the other workshops as well. So let's just get into the player script. And before that, like, do you have any questions? everything is fine. You just created a new tag, and I kind of forgot to assign this portal tag to my game object. You can also do that. Yeah, now we can just start implementing our private void on trigger enter 2D. Don't forget the 2D part. This one is pretty important. If it is not on trigger enter 2D, the Unity will basically assume that, oh, you're actually asking for on trigger enter for 3D core. So it won't work with that way. I'm just gonna make it pretty fast because we have done it several times. Other game object, no, not other collision. So from the collision, from this collider, we can actually get the information about the collided object. And let's have a little if statement right over here. If the collided game object has the tag portal right here, then we can say that debug.log, I don't know, you have entered the portal. So are you all done with it? On trigger enter, you should be familiar with it, I guess. So yeah, I'm just gonna get into the game to test if everything is working fine or not. Yeah, just move. Yeah, and our collider seems to be working. So let's just create a new scene and call it level 1. So you can go inside the scenes folder and create a new scene. I'm just going to keep it open there for a while. Right click, create scene. And then let's just call it level 1. Oh yeah, right click, create scene. All right. And let's just name it level 1. And when we double click this level 1 scene, we can also add several stuff to it. I don't know, like capsule, something like this for our level 2. Or you can also add a text. You can also add some UI elements that we have been doing so far. I don't know, auto size it, call it level 1, changing the drop shadow. Like maybe changing the color to something else. I don't know, like it's your call. And I just realized it's too ugly. I'm just gonna keep it as is. And I would like to remind you, if you move the camera and stuff, you're gonna see that this canvas object, this UI object will remain the same, just like this. So when we get into this little portal, we want to, get to the new scene. So, and also like, since canvas sort of like changes your orientations, positioning and stuff, if you just double click a certain game object, it will just teleport to it in your scene view. I think it's pretty useful. Yeah, let's just get into this player script. So inside this if statement, if we have collided with a portal, I just want to go to the scene manager and load a scene, but it's going to be red because scene manager is not imported. So we can just copy and paste this statement just like this, or like just write this part. And then you can see that we can use the scene manager now. It's now imported. Let's just call it level 1. And yeah. So when we play our game and collide, and by the way, like you all like typed this one, right? We only needed this one. Any questions? Anything unclear? All right. If we're gonna run this game, it will give an error because level 1 is not specified in the build settings. So for that, let's just open up the build settings from the file tab, and let's just drag and drop this new level that we've just created right here. And now Unity Editor knows that, oh, this one is a scene that I can use. If you're all done with it, and when we collide with this portal, new scene is created. However, our player is no more. Our player is gone now because like what we're saying to the Unity editor is like just start this level 1, and like level 1 is already like it has this configuration within itself, but it doesn't contain a player object inside it. So because of that, we would like to use a function called don't destroy on load. So let's get into the level 0 and open up the player script. If you're inside it, let's just create a void awake. And by the way, awake is pretty similar to start, but it works before start. It shouldn't really matter actually. You can also like add this function right over here. Like there are some subtle differences between these two, but yeah, you can use awake for your functionalities as well. So let's just use this function, don't destroy on load. So this function takes in a target, and if you like check this document right over here, we're basically saying that do not destroy the target object when loading a new scene. So it will be held there if you go into a new scene. Or like, for example, you can also disable it as well if you want. So we're just basically going to call this don't destroy on load, and we're just going to basically assign our game object. I want you to remember when you say game object, this one will basically get this components attached game object. You can also do something like this .game object to be more specific if you want. So yeah, and then we can just run this, collide with this little thing, and you're gonna see that the player will remain in our game. And as you can see, it's sort of like in its own place. So like you can see this level 1 scene, and there's this also little special thing that contains our player. You can also add multiple other game objects that you want to keep in your game. It's really up to you. And yeah, that's sort of it. I guess I have like 12 minutes. Maybe like I can show you a little thing as well. It shouldn't take long. So yeah, that was basically the scene management and like keeping objects within your scenes. Yeah, let's get into the main menu. So as you can see, our options menu is a little bit like empty. Maybe like we can just add a little like functionality right over here. Like if you just open and like enable this one, I'm just gonna show you how to create another UI tool, which is pretty useful. And also like if you just right click and look for the UI objects, if you're familiar with, I don't know, application development or HTML, like you should be familiar with other stuff like drop down. You kind of get how they work, or like input field, it's taking an input, and like when you press enter, it will basically shoot this little input string to somewhere else, or like a scroll bar, scroll wheel, a slider. You kind of get how they work. But I just want to show how toggle works. So if you create a little toggle, it will basically remain right here. So yeah, you can just select this. We're just gonna make it a little prettier. And you can see that just as how, like when we create a little button, it has like certain child objects attached to it. This toggle one has the same thing as well. You can make changes to this label. I don't know, like change function. And also you can see that this little text label is the legacy version. I'm not really sure why Unity is not using Text Mesh Pro for it, but yeah, it might be a good idea to use it if you want. Or like you can also delete this one and like create a Text Mesh Pro of your own if you want. I'm just gonna change the color of it to white. And yeah, let's just make it a little bigger. So yeah, this background thing. Let's just, inside this toggle object, let's just select this background. This one basically corresponds to this little thing, little tick, white tick that you see. Let's just change it to 100 by 100. And I don't know, change the label with the same attributes as well, so that like it doesn't look weird. Yeah, just you can also make this little thing like labels width and height a bit bigger, because like as you can see, if it overflows, it just disappears. You can actually make some changes to it so that like it won't disappear. Yeah, the functionality that I would like to add in here is basically when this little tick is clicked, the background color will be changed to red instead of this color, for example. Anyway, if you just change the size of this background to 100 by 100, you can also stretch this little check mark. It's actually too little at this moment. You can manually change its size from here, or just just like we have done with the background image, you can just press Alt and stretch it as well. So yeah, we can just take this little toggle UI object and move it right over here. So the working logic is pretty similar to buttons actually. So you can actually set the default setting of this toggle if you want. So as you can see, if I just uncheck this one, this little tick is gone now. So yeah, basically what we had for the buttons were on click, but this one is basically taking functions and calling those functions whenever this is on value is changed. Right? So, all right, I'm just gonna create this little script for options menu logic. Just select this options menu and just have this logic to it. So any questions? All right. So when we get inside this options menu logic, what we really want to do is, like, let's just have a public void toggle button logic. And like I mentioned, this toggle button logic will basically change the background color to red and something like that. Debug.log, you don't have to follow along in this one. Checked, or like toggle is changed. Yeah, if you just select this toggle game object real quick and add a new function to it, we can also just, assign this little options menu to it and get this function that we have just created, which is toggle button logic. And if you just run the game and make changes to it, yeah, you're gonna see that whenever we uncheck it or like check it, the value is changed. And I will quickly add this little, functionality to, change the color. You don't have to follow along in this one because like this one is, I think, pretty simple. I'm just gonna hold the information of the image. Oh, sorry. Also, I have to. We also have to import the UI library as well, so that we can, get access to image, toggle button, like any component that is related to UIs. So image, background, image, just like this, public, toggle, background, or like options, toggle. Now, the functionality I had in mind is basically this. I'm just gonna comment this out. So if, and by the way, this options toggle will pretty much correspond to this object, right? So if this options toggle is on, then we want to change this background image color to red. And else, if it is not on, we want to change its color to its default state, which happens to be just white. And yeah, if you're all done like adding those to your code, let's just assign those values to the options menu, right? So background image is this one, the whole thing that we have just stretched at the beginning. We're gonna change its color, and options toggle is this one, this toggle object that we've just created. I'm just gonna, change the label to something like make background red. And now, if we play our game, and if we click this, the background color will change. And if you uncheck it, it will return back to its normal state. And yeah, that was basically it. We basically covered up how to manage our scenes, how to keep our game objects within different scenes. We learned about different buttons, text, and like other UI elements as well. And yeah, maybe I should do these ones as well. I assume you all know that we will be having a game jam in like 2 weeks. And like if you have any like feedbacks, just please scan. Oh yeah, do you have any questions?
Yeah, it's not letting me touch any background options for some reason.
Oh yeah, let me just help you. I'm just gonna close up the recording.